I'll cede a lot of my time so Morrie has the last word here. I think I just want to thank all of our panelists, but it's pretty exceptional. Earlier today, I was sitting with a friend from Celgene who I sat next to last year at this event. And to hear from the same patient that's still thriving, to hear about new and innovative products, to hear about the more established companies making these great leaps and bounds, to hear about a company that's just 3 weeks old. I think we had a lot of take-homes here today that you can use on the Hill tomorrow, and how exciting this is. And hopefully when we all come back here next year with being hosted by the Alliance for Regenerative Medicine,
Is that an invitation to do this again?
Yeah. I hope everyone is as excited as I am to hear kind of the progress we've made in just this year, and using some of these take-homes, like what we can make moving forward. So thank you. Thank you, John.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. I want to thank all the panelists. So this has been really I think, a tremendously enlightening session and very useful for all of our advocacy efforts and what we're trying to accomplish as an organization. So we've got just 5 or 10 minutes left before cocktails, and there's some Sabre champagne ceremony that they want us to come over there and observe at some point. I don't know what that involves. Sabre was the word that came to my mind. So when we did this the first time, as I mentioned at the beginning, with the first roundtable we did with the rare disease community, we did spend a little time kind of reflecting on the dialogue over the course of the day. And this is really meant to be an educational tool, and we want to involve the patient community in this. I mean, this is really collaborative, and I think that's been one of the themes here today. So we'd love to hear from you all. I mean, as you all have ideas just about what you're hearing. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of topics that emerged here today. I mean, it's very hard to condense this into a couple of hours, but there's certainly some takeaways. And I think, one of the things that Ryan and others have mentioned is, how this does involve, a number of different stakeholders. And so the role of the patients, as you've heard, I think today, is going to be really important in this process. That's something I think that's going to be part of our message tomorrow when we're on the Hill. But I think there's also a recognition, certainly with us and then with you all, that these, especially the therapies that we're talking about, are different. This is not the same process that we've gone through with other types of therapeutics, and it's more complicated, especially when we're talking about autologous therapies. And that's where I think the education becomes even more important, because I don't know, I was just talking with Jamie about this afterwards, I mean, how much the patients in her world, the people you're talking to, actually appreciate that. And that's something where I think we need to do a lot of work. And so I'm just curious, I mean, people in the audience, I mean, how do you all think, are these types of get-togethers important in this process? I mean, obviously this is just, again, one small group, but do we need to do it on a larger scale? Do we need to do more of them? Sure.
Yeah, this forum is great. But I do have a question for Michael. And forgive me if I misunderstood you, but you said earlier that it seemed like a good idea a few years ago to get patients involved. And maybe it's not that great of an idea now, and it's tipping the scales, or?
Yeah, no. If that's the way it came out, I apologize. No, what I meant was that, I agreed with the first part. It absolutely has been a good idea to get patients more involved in clinical trials, and as Jamie said, more and more companies are doing that in terms of their planning of their clinical program and having input from patients about that and about sort of a lot of the decisions and the issues that come along. I think that movement started in earnest several years ago, but it really started to peak and we saw last year in the reauthorization of the prescription drug user fee that Congress asked FDA specifically to reach out to the patient advocacy community when designing the program for the user fee program for drug reviews. So that's what I meant. That kind of thing has gone on, and the FDA has taken to sort of having people who are involved with being liaison with patients and all that. What I was referring to as a note of caution was not that patients shouldn't be involved in this, but that we need to make sure that the FDA remains perhaps the independent arbiter of risk-benefit for specific products, and that what I think is happening is that there are efforts to try to circumvent the FDA or cut them out or limit their authority, and I think that gets dangerous. That gets dangerous for all patients because we have to make sure that we know what works, and the way to do that is through the clinical trial process. And so that was the point I was making, that it's really important to have patient involvement, but that it's also really important to make sure that the FDA is there looking at all of the science, looking at all of the data, and that they are the ones who get to decide, based on all of that information. So that was my point.
And it's a tough spot to be in for a patient or a parent of a child.
There's no question.
My mission is to prolong his life.
There's no question about that. Yes. I mean, so the issue here is what you just said. The issue here is that somebody in your family, in this case, is really sick, and that's the really horrible thing that's put you in the position you're in, if you will. And so I think that the challenge that we have from a policy perspective is how do we make sure that your voice is heard throughout, right? From the beginning throughout, while also making sure that we've got a strong system in place that's going to thoroughly evaluate the products that we're going to make sure your kid's going to get. And that's the challenge.
Good question.
I just wanted to add to that. One of the very important, charges I think for FDA is, well, for our office at least, is really trying to have that expanded access option, available to patients, and the physicians prescribing, care to those patients. So there's a big effort on trying to get single patient IND process streamlined, such that those investigational products can be made available through that expanded access program, to the providers and to their patients.
Right.
I found this very informative, and it was great to see the advance in the industry. We read about these kinds of things and don't really get the details. I would encourage everyone to look more into the solid cancers. Being a colon cancer survivor myself, chemo sucks, and to be able to have this sort of an alternative.
Absolutely.
I think sort of no matter how much it may have other effects, compared to chemo, it's probably going to be a walk in the park. So I'd like to encourage things to keep moving, and I like the direction they're moving in so far.
Great. I just want to mention a couple of people here before we leave. So Wendy, if you could just stand up. Wendy's been asking the questions during all the session. So Wendy Selig has been working with us for about the last year now, with all of our patient outreach efforts. I mean, she's obviously been working in oncology for a long time, so we want to thank her for all of her help. I also want to recognize Sean Tunis. Sean, I didn't tell you I was going to do this. He's sitting over. So Sean used to be at CMS, and many of you know him and his former role there. And maybe when we come back next year, as we're reflecting upon commercialization, we'd love to get your input on this going forward. I know this is something you're thinking about a lot through your current group. So that's part of the story, and I think part of the conversation for us as well. Any other last questions? I think cocktails are waiting. All right, thank you, everyone.